Ed, you're free to start.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:30 on Friday, December 3rd, and I'm calling this City of Rehoboth Beach Streets and Transportation Committee meeting to order. I'm going to do, well, first of all, I want to say thank you. I'm honored to be the new chair and to work with each of you committee members. I'm going to ask to take a roll call vote by name. Anytime we do this, and if we do happen to vote or you're commenting, if you could just make a little hand signal or raise your hand so folks viewing can easily identify who's speaking. With that, David Diefendorfer.
Here.
Donna Mayberry.
Here.
John Geiger. The record showed John is not with us at this time. David Mann.
Here.
David's here. John Dewey.
Here.
And the chair is here, and we have a quorum to officially conduct business. The last meeting was held on July 22nd. To my knowledge, I've not seen those minutes. Did anyone here take those minutes and has them?
They would have been done by John Gauger.
Okay, I will follow up with and include this in the next, defer this approval of minutes till the next meeting. Next on the agenda is correspondence. To my knowledge, we do not have any public correspondence. Going on to old business, I'm going to make this first one fairly brief. It is continued discussion of potential crosswalk on Rehoboth Avenue between 4th and 5th Streets. Speaking with the city manager, mayor, the former chair, we believe DelDOT has done an extensive study on this, and there is documentation, which I am in the midst of getting, and then we'll share with this committee. And I think it's more valuable, a better use of time if we have that information in front of us before we continue any dialogue. But I'll leave it open for if anyone has any specific comments, but I'd like to get that information in our hands before we continue much discussion on that topic. Anyone have anything?
Makes sense to me.
Great. We will defer that to the next meeting, and hopefully we've got all of that information in hand by then. Next on the agenda is discussion of possible streetscape on King Charles Avenue. Obviously, this is a bit of a transition. I've talked high level with people in the past about that. It's come up in some of our commissioner meetings, but I think you all have had more dialogue on that topic and would like to open it up for further discussion.
The primary focus that we evolved to on King Charles was crosswalks, since they're the longest crossing distances in the city for pedestrians and they're unprotected. And so in the Casti-Otherholm era, we were going to get crosswalks on the north side of each intersection going east-west. And then we learned that there needs to be a landing point in the middle. So that's gone dormant. We've also discussed adding bicycle lanes, and we've also discussed perpendicular parking and a lot of other things along there. But nothing. We've discussed planting trees in the middle to create a median. Nothing's happened. And Kevin might have some idea of if there's anything on tap for there, but I got the impression there was nothing forthcoming for King Charles.
Dave, that's correct. We don't really, I mean, it's not at the top of our list of places where we need to, to get compliant crosswalks and the like. Obviously this year our focus has been on, the state road coming in And there were just too many variables kind of being mulled about King Charles to kind of decide on the crosswalk being the first decision, with respect to all those things you mentioned that were happening or talked about on King Charles.
Kevin, I know it's probably not the highest priority, but there is a lot of infrastructure money potentially out there to do projects like this. Is that something that you think sort of this may be an opportunity now that we may not have a few years from now?
If that money shows up, maybe, I'd still probably say it would still be fairly low on the overall priority list. But it's not a big dollar item either. I mean, it's probably 50,000, if that's not a kind of a rough number, to get it out there, four corners and a kind of crosswalk, probably a little bump out, maybe a little higher. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what infrastructure money does ultimately get to us. Yeah. It would certainly make it easier.
Well,
I'm glad to hear you say those things, Kevin, that it does seem a low priority. I think of all the things we've talked about here on the committee, that it has been a lower priority. And I was going to recommend to the committee that all the things we've talked about, that we set priorities so that as money becomes available, we'll know what to target first. And it sounds like if we don't know the money's here, it'd probably be okay to delay it a year before table this for a year until we make a decision. But I concur and that it's not a high priority. And people I've talked with about the proposed ideas is that they're very much opposed to the idea of putting a median there on King Charles. And they know about the idea about that's one place we can expand parking if we need to. People appreciate having the space on King Charles, actually having a street where you can bike or walk or drive without feeling so crowded and worried about hitting someone. And I think, as I said, we've just talked about other things such as the shoulders along Surf there by Deauville Beach. So that's safer for all the bikers and all the pedestrians that walk on the street. Ways of improving that. The shoulders, getting rid of the gravel.
Donna, I'm glad you brought that up because it's been in the back of my mind to ask this group. Is it from Streets and Transportation Committee? Is it beneficial to asphalt those shoulders?
Absolutely.
For that, right? So then I go to the Green Infrastructure Committee, right, and they're like, "Well, no." But this committee's position is, yeah, it would be beneficial to have it because we've got the paving team is out there. It's going to be there in a couple of weeks. We're going to be paving.
Wow.
So if we wanted to do it at that time, it would be obviously the most cost efficient time to do it.
Well, the conversation began with Keith Banks and his concern over the safety of people along that stretch from the hotel down to the stop sign at Rehoboth Avenue and Ocean Drive. That was identified years ago as an area of specific concern. So we looked at it, we talked about it. Ideally, the shoulders would get paved, asphalted, the center line could be repositioned. Then we could have bicycle lanes on both sides of the street. And the pushback, there was some pushback over the non-direct revenue parking along the ocean side of Surf. Could that be pushed back to one of the side streets or could it be pushed over to the Deauville Beach lot? Because there's one stretch where it's quite easy to get the access, but then when we start having to move cars out of the way, it gets a little bit tighter the further we go to the north.
Well, it really pinches down. Is it Columbia at Henlope, and it's pretty narrow on both sides. There's really not much of a shoulder there.
Correct.
My guys, the streets guys, are always complaining that the graveled area on the side, the parking area is on the east side of Surf, closer to Lake. They erode all the time, or the cars got ruts, and we're always in there trying to fill those holes and the like. So my guys would say, can we just pave those shoulders right there? For sure. It doesn't address moving the center line and putting in bike lanes, but more of a
Mhm.
It would certainly give us a better pathway to those objectives if we're able to get the asphalt in place.
Mhm.
Then we could do more.
Sure.
We'd have a lot of flexibility that way. I think paving is ideal.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, this was kind of on the top of my priorities to address that. Another step we can take to help with safety for bicyclists. And the other thing on that strip is because the sidewalk's so narrow, you have people with wagons and pulling children on the street. I mean, the safer we can make that area, the better. And for those who are concerned about from the green perspective, I share that concern and think we need to factor that in. But if you do paving there, Kevin, can you use that permeable pavement?
We wouldn't be able to do that now with permeable pavement.
Okay.
Time of year, and the quantity to do a small batch quantity is very difficult. It's not the easiest to maintain, to be honest with you. And if you look at
Remember how we have to vacuum the parking lot?
Yeah, right. Well, they do vacuum the street. I mean, is it the same vacuum?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, well,
the
they
brush
do
type
vacuum
has
it.
to be the vacuum type. And if you look at the parking areas here in the City Hall parking lot that were permeable, yeah, it's not the best.
Kevin,
They've silted in.
Silted in because it's not compacted as much. There's tire ruts, where you park on it in July and your truck just kind of settles in a little bit. So.
Well, my concern as a bicyclist is all the gravel that gets on the road.
Okay.
It's just not safe. You don't know what to do. It makes it harder for you to avoid other people or not be an object for someone else. And like I said, with all the families and kids walking on the street itself in that area, it worries me. So it's not a big stretch. I mean, I would hope we could clean that up and pave the sides, and if there's room for a bike lane too, all the better.
Well,
Kevin, when is that paving planned for?
So they're supposed to mobilize the paver around the 15th of December. So then it'll just be weather dependent. They're going to hit Maryland and Olive first because we got where we did the water main work. So we'll resurface those. Then I think they go to Surf, then they go to Lake. So probably sometime in January, as long as we get some cooperation from the weather.
Okay.
Fantastic.
With that, I'm going to pull us back a little bit because we are getting off the agenda a little bit. If we can, I think we need to discuss that and have it as an agenda item. Perhaps a special meeting if it is time sensitive too. But Kevin, why don't you and I follow up on that right after and kind of look at what a process would be with this group having a recommendation, and if it is something that needs to go before the mayor and commissioners, or it's more administrative recommendation to Sharon and yourself. But I'd like to, in terms of the agenda item, which is more of the streetscape on King Charles on the south end, it sounds like it is not a high priority. That's sort of what I'm hearing from the members. Anyone else want to weigh in on that specifically? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I do. Thank you for allowing me to be on the committee here. I'm new to the committee. It's my first meeting, obviously. Kevin, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good. Yeah. All right. Go Army. Right. Beat Navy.
Yeah. Navy. Right.
Big game coming up in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Or a week and a half.
So, and I understand.
Who are we supposed to root for, Army or Navy?
Root for Army. Yes. Root for Army.
Okay, Army. Okay, I'll try to keep it in mind.
So I went back and I listened to the past couple meetings that I could get on video, and I understand a lot of discussion about the streetscape on King Charles. And I know I've talked to Kevin about this a little bit when I've seen him up at City Hall. And I understand it may not be a low priority. And I know there's a lot of issues with, we like the wide open street, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll tell you, I live on the second block of Newcastle. And this summer I was almost killed 3 times crossing that road to go to the beach. People do not stop. I walk out and I make them stop. And I mean, that's probably why I was almost killed a couple of times. But, you know, they won't stop.
Right. Navy guys. They don't
You're
know.
walking across, you're carrying stuff with the beach, you're pulling a wagon, you have all kind of things. People, many will stop, but some people just do not stop. And if you had some type of crosswalk, and I understand about the you know, it jams up the middle, you have to have a landing area for ADA compliant, et cetera. But personally would not want to, I would like to see us do something with that. In any fashion, could we put like at the Catholic Church up there, they have the little, whatever the little sign is, crosswalk sign.
Yeah.
A silent policeman, I think.
Right. Something, because I'm telling you, I cross that a lot, and people speed down that road, no matter what the police department says, they speed down the road, and a lot of times they don't stop for you. So that's just my comments on that.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
If I could jump in, this is John Dewey speaking. If memory serves, there was some discussion, as Donna was reflecting, about, I guess it's sleeping policemen there. And Kevin, I'm wondering if you were there for part of that meeting. But in any event, you know, I live in downtown in Old Newcastle, and we have a number of kind of challenging crossing areas. And those sleeping policemen are out there. And if nothing else, they serve as a bit of a deterrent to speed because people do have to maneuver around them. So I would encourage us to consider consider those as part of the discussion. The other thing I would put out there for consideration is, although it's not the complete plan, I understand that in order to do completely compliant crosswalks, they would have to have ADA ramping. There would have to be a landing pad in the middle of the streets. When that came up, as conversations often do, well, if we do that, can we do this? If we do that extra thing, can we do this third thing? So the conversation kind of snowballed. If there is a limited amount of money to address what at least some members of the committee feel may be a safety priority, if we only even had teardrops at the locations where in the middle of the street where the crosswalks were going to be, enough of a teardrop to make it legally compliant, that would be, I think, a relatively low cost project. It would give a place for families to shelter in place, because I agree with Dave. That's the crossing that I use going back and forth to the beach as well. If you're not watchful, and the other challenge with a wide street is, frankly, it encourages speed.
Well,
So just real quick, can I make one point quickly to just clarify terminology?
Yeah.
So a sleeping policeman is a speed bump. Sleeping policeman is laying down. Silent policeman is vertical. So what we're looking for are silent policemen, like we have at State and Hickman and Canal. We just want the vertical ones, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
Amen.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you for the clarification. Kevin, you want to, and then we'll come to you, Donna.
What was it? Teardrop?
Yeah, what's a teardrop? Is
That
that a
was
tech?
in the middle of the street. So if you're crossing from corner to corner, there would be a small island in the middle of the street. And the suggested shape was teardrop in order to be less surface for a car to hit if they weren't paying attention.
Sure.
And you have to have what is that surface called, Kevin, with the bumps for visually impaired?
The truncated dome pavers?
Yes. So
Right,
we would
most of
have to have that
Yeah, most of the corners.
at the teardrop, right?
Yeah, they don't have they don't have the piece in the middle, right? Most of the intersections, I'm looking at Google Map right now, have already been done. So I think the corner piece and the truncated domes at most places seem to be there already. It's just to paint a crosswalk across the street, then because of the length, they've told us that you should have an island in the middle for them. And then you got to have, if somebody's standing there, then you got to have bollards or something to protect them while they're standing in that area.
So it sounds like for $50,000, that's a remarkable value to protect people. at $50,000 to perform that.
I mean, that's an estimate of what it's going to cost to do the
That's-
state road. So
that's
I just
fantastic.
use that as a ballpark.
Yeah, that, and we're just, I don't want to bump the agenda. We can talk about State and Grove later, but so at 50K, where would that fit on your hit list for things to do? It's a value buy to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
So what's the pleasure of the committee here? It sounds like focusing on things to reduce speed and help, such as having a silent policeman, are alternatives than a full-blown streetscape with a median and official crosswalks. Some alternative things.
anytime we can do a little bit of individual research and forward it to Kevin, I know he appreciates it, because we're out and about and you see these things in other cities, other towns.
Well, you made me a believer in the bike box, right? I've never even seen
Hey.
a bike box, and now we're not going to do that. We're not going to.
I have more.
Fun and see how it's used. Go, yeah, we got to put one on Church Street too.
I have more for you, but I'm going to save it for the next meeting.
Yeah, so I guess right. I would say if the committee was going to make a recommendation, say okay, at a minimum, let's try to look for where would you want to put a silent policeman, right? Because there's a lot of people that don't really like those for all valid reasons, but they are relatively inexpensive and very quick. We could put one out on an intersection and just try it, see what happens. The worst thing can happen is you put a couple holes in the street where you anchor those in.
Well, maybe put it there on Newcastle where Dave was talking about. He likes to cross there.
John likes to cross there, so that sounds like a good place to start.
Right. So that would, if you put that as a recommendation, and second would be okay if it's worthy, get the board to say, yeah, we want to proceed with putting a ADA compliant crosswalk somewhere on that south end of King Charles, and whether it's Rodney, Stokely, Newcastle, wherever, but make a recommendation as to where, and then we could then justify putting it in the budget to at least do the design and get a construction estimate, and just to get it. Kind of like we did on State Road for those that were here when we were kind of muscling our way through that. It's just kind of one step at a time. Start with a silent policeman because you can do that now. Yes, the board's going to tell me that we want to go ahead and do a design for a compliant crosswalk somewhere on King Charles, and then they'll fund it in the budget once we get a construction estimate. So it's a couple-year process, but it's very doable. I mean, it's certainly within the realm of what we do every year with respect to upgrades, and we're more ADA compliant, which is always a goal of ours. So yeah, and we want to be safe. So I think all the justifications are there. We just need y'all to kind of formalize that to the board. Let the board say, "Yeah, we endorse that," and go forth and do good. And we'll go forth and do good.
They
Go
also
ahead,
have
Dave.
one on the road between Dewey and Rehoboth. I'm not sure. Right as you come up onto the, right as you're approaching Silver Lake there, every once in a while it gets run over. I see it, and somebody end up putting it back. That'll happen. I'm sure, but at least might slow people down. I'm in favor of that. At least to start something.
The people at not Grove, at Canal and Hickman, I think, Donnie, you're in that area. I think they're very happy with the silent policeman.
Absolutely, they've worked out really well.
Right.
Particularly when they got pushed back, Kevin, it made it.
Get them in the right position, so
Yes.
turn and the like. But again, it's a very cheap and easy thing to do. It does cause some problems with snow plows, which, knock on wood, we haven't had to do recently. But yeah, it's better than a speed bump in my mind.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They've worked out really well, and slowly but surely people are paying attention to them.
Yeah.
And actually stop.
Mm-hmm.
So and I like your idea of a gradual approach here, Kevin. That tests things out, small steps.
So pop 2 on either side of it, Newcastle, and go from there. Well, they're a few $100 a piece, right?
I think 300. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think our guys make them. So the sign guys make them. So.
Okay, so it sounds like we will come up with some gradual recommendations. Potentially at our next meeting, we'll recommend, if someone wants to make a motion that we make a specific recommendation now, happy to entertain that. Kevin, what are your thoughts on how this committee could proceed?
I would just say a formal recommendation to the board at, the 15th or 17th, whenever the next meeting is. As a result of our committee meeting, we have a couple of things we'd like to, especially now at budget times, perfect time to say, here are a couple of things that we would request you get into the budget for next year. Two silent policemen at Newcastle, and feasibility study for an ADA compliant crosswalk somewhere on the south end of King Charles. And if you know right where you want it, just say that as well. But something along those lines, and then we'll get the smart people to look at it and go, this is the best place. We could even do some traffic counting, if we needed to just see how many people are going across and when. So,
yeah.
But take that as a recommendation to the board, get the board, and they typically, right, they say, yeah, we endorse that. Then we'll move forward with getting it into the budget for the upcoming year, at least to do, maybe even get going on the design.
We just need a simple motion to implement silent policemen at the crosswalks on King Charles, specifically starting with Newcastle. And then we could prioritize the other intersections and just give it to the Board of Commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
How about we limit it to like 2 silent policemen to start with, like one at Newcastle. And I don't know that we need it at every intersection. So maybe one further down,
if I could recommend,
just 2 to start with.
it takes 2 really.
It takes 2 to make it work.
But I would recommend doing 1 intersection and then
See how it works out.
The 7 to go, yeah, it did make a difference, get that kind of feedback rather than throwing 2 out.
So it would take 2 at Newcastle.
Yes.
Silent policemen.
Okay.
I wouldn't go for do every intersection down King Charles, right? Let's do 1, evaluate it this year and see if it helps.
Well, how about if I make the motion?
Please.
Go ahead,
Dave,
Donna.
you wanted, okay, I was waiting for you. Okay, I make a motion that we ask the city commissioners to consider putting in a silent policeman at the intersection of Newcastle and King Charles. And as soon as they can work it into the budget, and that be evaluated for possible handicap crosswalks in the future. So does that cover?
Just revise it to the word 2 silent policemen.
2 silent policemen there at the intersection of Newcastle and King Charles.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
Okay, we have a recommendation made to, for this committee to recommend to the mayor and commissioners to implement 2 silent policemen at the intersection of King Charles and Newcastle. And to evaluate the success of that. We have a motion made by Donna, a second by David Mann. I'll take a group vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it unanimously passes. Great. And I'll leave this on next month's agenda just so we can get an update from Kevin at that time. Next on the agenda is continued discussion height of the wayfinding signs for bicycles. My understanding is that the height of the signs for bicycles were placed at a normal height, whereas they may have needed to be lower for the line of sight of those on bicycles.
Normal street signs end up at about 8 feet, and that's inappropriate for bicycles. So we asked that they be lowered to 6 feet.
Was this part in your? I viewed a bunch of the previous meetings, but I don't recall there ever being a formal recommendation to the city. Is that correct?
Without John Gauger's notes, I can't tell you.
Okay.
It was a pretty simple merge thing when they put the signs in.
Okay.
And the same thing happened with Del Dot a few places up when they did the new Gulls Neck Road trail, the pathway. Some of them got set too high because typically the street signs are at 8 feet. And so that's what sign people are used to placing signs at. They're not used to doing bicycle signs.
Kevin, do
And
you
for
know
cyclists, it's just too high.
yeah. Kevin, do you know if those changes were made yet, or if a formal
Evan
request?
sent a note to the merge folks, who did the signage for us. I'm just looking at his response now. That they find that 7'0" to 7'6" works best. We've had some requests for 8. He measures, it's got to be set back 2 feet from the edge of the roadway. Got to be able to be whatever the cars or trucks that drive by it don't hit it on the way up.
Setbacks are all pretty good. The setback placement is good.
Are there specific ones, Dave, that were the issue?
The two most prominent ones are the gateway at Ocean Drive where it meets Surf and Henlopen Avenue.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of room there, right?
So those are the ones where you get. 2 years ago, the cycle count was over 50,000, and I mean, the past 2 years, bicycles have gone crazy. So my feeling was we'd be way above that now. But
Where's the second one?
you've got the northeast corner of Henlopen, Surf, and Ocean Drive. Then you've got the southeast corner
Oh, okay, they're
across
both
the street. Those two.
Okay. Okay, we'll go. I'll
Because
go.
the most asked question typically with cyclists is, where am I?
Okay.
And then is, how do I get to Rehoboth, or how do I get back to Lewis?
Mhm.
Or if we're on the other end, it's how do I get back to Rehoboth?
Okay.
So they're just out of people's sight lines, unfortunately, because the signs are good
Mhm.
and they have the right information.
One alarm.
Kevin, I don't think this committee needs to take any further formal action. I think I'll follow up with you and Evan to ensure that those heights are changed.
Yeah, and he goes on to say the minimum you could go is 4 feet above, but you'd be happy with
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Yeah, 4 feet's almost too low. Kids, it would be great.
Yeah.
But most of the riders are adults,
Okay.
vast majority,
Mhm.
except on Rehoboth Avenue.
Okay.
Sadly.
Any other comments on that topic?
No, I think if we get those adjusted, then we can look at the rest.
Mhm.
And if they need to be done, we can just put it on the list.
Okay. Great. Next on the old business is continued discussion regarding issue of bicycles heading east from the bike path on Rehoboth Avenue. My understanding that was discussed here. There originally was not a sign. There now is a sign, and that issue is cured. Is that?
Oh, I wouldn't say it's cured. I would say it's a free-for-all. It's better because Kevin and his team put more vertical delineators in. But problem number one is the eastbound cyclist that wants to cross and get over to Egg without going another half a block to get to the crosswalk. That became problem number one. The let me dive across to Canal Street in front of the oncoming cars, which, as we all know, as they approach the circle, seem to want to go faster, not slower. Then problem number two is the cyclist continues straight ahead and then gets to the lip of the parking lot for the museum and the visitor center.
Yep.
Oh, I'm not supposed to be here. Then they decide to cross over to the median because at that point their focus is more going to rise up. Then there's number three where they continue riding straight into town and all of a sudden they're at the traffic circle on the wrong side of the street, which is really not good. But we are getting more and more people that are turning left. The temporary sign with the 2 cones is still there, which is fabulous. So I spent a fair amount of time there watering plants, kind of watching the world go by. And it is much better than it was the first week that it was in operation. Right now, to me, the biggest problem probably is at the tail end or the northwest end of the path that we took responsibility for under the city's wing, where the sign says Junction and Breakswater Trail to the left. So you come across Canal Crossing, you've been at Revelation for happy hour, you can't quite remember where you are. Sign says turn left, where it should have an arrow pointing straight ahead to stay on the pathway. That to me was the simple one. But there are a lot of people that don't follow the Church Street to get across Rehoboth Avenue. And so my feeling is if we supplement that correcting the arrow and make it go straight, then we put a cross Rehoboth Avenue arrow something. Then Kevin already knows about the bike box, which he's talked to DelDOT about, so that when you're waiting at the Church Street light to turn left and go across, you'll be better protected. And I have to say the typical problem there is people coming in the opposite direction, but it is a pretty well controlled intersection, and there are enough bicycles there on a consistent basis where I feel like, generally speaking, the people in cars are used to them. But we still have an issue there. It's just education. People get their own special wake up call when they get there.
Next time you're out riding, Dave, if you would just take a picture of that sign.
Absolutely.
Send that to me, then I'll talk to DelDOT.
My cardiologist says I can go again tomorrow.
All right,
Hard.
Good. Good.
Yes.
Any other further discussion on that bike pathway there coming into town? Okay, sounds like we've got some follow-up with David and Kevin, and we'll get an update on that at the next meeting. That's all
The typical problem, Edward, there is that people that are for the first time,
Yeah.
the veteran people get used to it. We get a lot of people here that are just here for a week.
Yep.
And it's hard for them.
Next on the agenda is new business, discussion of new members to the Streets and Transportation Committee. We have 6, and we should have 7 members, so it's an odd number. So there, to my knowledge, there's only been 2 applications submitted for members to this committee. And my thought to recommend to the mayor and commissioners for a new committee member would be Elise Moore, who is one of the owners of the Admiral Hotel and is already on the Baltimore-Wilmington Streetscape Task Force. So I thought her being on that task force already would be good to replace Pat Caluzzi's position on that task force. Elise has been in town for a long time. They've owned many businesses and own other property. And I thought it would be a good person for this committee. So just wanted to open it up for discussion with you all.
So is there another person other than Elise Moore?
The one other application that was submitted, and I don't know the timing. It might have been a while ago. Was Jeffrey Good, who they live right on. Jeffrey and Suzanne live right on Grove Park, on Grove Street.
I don't think it can hurt for us to have more people.
Okay. Donna, you're muted if you're commenting.
I was just concurring with David that it's good to expand the committee, and if we need an odd number, maybe we even make it 3.
I'll go back
We
and
can
take a
recruit-
look at how many applications were received in the past. I think Elise was the most recent, and I don't recall how far back Jeffrey's interest was, but I can go back and see how many more people have indicated interest in the committee, and we can revisit it. All right.
Please.
Yeah,
Uh,
sounds good.
So with that, I'm going to discuss items to include in future agendas. I'm just going to very briefly, I asked all of you to give me some of your thoughts. I'm just going to kind of go through that list pretty broadly and let us discuss a little bit on where we think priorities should be in setting the future agendas. And first and foremost, the Homeowners Association this year created a bicycle pamphlet, I think a path with some information in a pamphlet and a map. And I think they would like the city to adopt that and endorse it and make it available in the city hall and throughout the city. So I'm going to ask them to come and give us a very brief presentation at the next meeting so we can have some input and recommend or not recommend to the city staff that we sort of endorse that bicycle map and pamphlet as citywide. So that's
Edward, on that topic,
sure.
my recollection is that was never presented to this committee, that map. It just appeared. And there's a city map and there's an HOA map. And it would be nice to just have one that we could all get behind.
Agreed, and I think that's what they're asking us to do. So I will put this topic as a new agenda item at our next meeting, so we can hear from them. We can take a look at all three maps and give some thoughts on which one's the best and which one we as a city should endorse.
Could you send us those so we can take a look?
Will do.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna just very quickly go through all of the items that you've all submitted to me on different topics, and then I'm just gonna open it up for us to speak pretty broadly about it. Look at all streets and transportation issues from the perspective of climate change. Reduce the carbon footprint and heat absorption. That's number one. Number two, improve safety at the circle, enhance visibility. That was a common theme. Number three, improve bicycle safety, decrease graveled streets and shoulders. We spoke briefly about that today, and I think we'll have a special meeting to talk about that. Number four, reduce obstacles within traffic flow. For example, delivery trucks. Number five, incorporating universal design principles into the public environment, pedestrian access, and safety. Number six, gentling traffic on key avenues and streets. Number seven, alternatives to private cars as a primary means to access the city. One thing on that topic I'd like to ask is the Chamber of Commerce to join us in one of our future meetings so that they could maybe tell us a little bit about using the elementary school parking lot for employees this year and having the shuttle service and how that worked. Number eight, more solar-powered speed signs with radar, potentially a speed cam. And number nine, increase signage at crosswalks. Those are sort of the 10 items that at least I gathered was important to this committee all of you as committee members. With that, I'll just kind of open it up to where you all think we should prioritize some future meetings and what topics are important.
So one of the things that we were expecting, and Kevin can, I'm sure, comment, we were expecting sharrows across the Silver Lake Bridge with signage, share the road, and we were expecting sharrows up and down Rehoboth Avenue. Do we know where that stands?
I think that's still in the plan. I mean, obviously Bill Maffei is our sign and paint guy. It's on his list of things to do. I know he has that. He wanted us to mark the 2 speed bumps over on Lake. So
Yes.
they're on his list. So he comes back after the holidays, and as soon as he puts that into his schedule, I think the plan is still to have it done before this coming season.
Awesome. Thank you.
There were tons and tons of sharrows. I think it was on the order of 100 or so, right? Down various streets, and then
Yes.
And Kevin, refresh my memory. This is something that we as the mayor and commissioners have already approved and signed off on, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It was right at last spring, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Speed bump markings on Lake and the bike shares, about 100 of them.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on it and get some updates
Right.
on the sharrows. Anything else? So I think it's fair to say that the improving bicycle and pedestrian safety and decreasing graveled streets and shoulders, is that it kind of sounds like that's a priority for a lot of this committee members. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's something we talked about before. It is a hazard, and if we could progress with that, that would be good, I think.
Okay, great.
Well, I'm looking for a little bit more information about what folks are considering as we're talking about bicycle and pedestrian safety, because they're both relatively broad. There are some relatively specific areas that come to mind when people are talking about pedestrian safety. And my key concerns right now are limited to Rehoboth Avenue. Are there other issues that need to be addressed? Absolutely. We spent some time talking about one of those key areas earlier today. Drivers roundly ignore the flashing crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue. Drivers routinely speed on Rehoboth Avenue, even as they see those lights flashing. And as has come up in other conversations today, drivers either are ignorant, meaning lack of information, how to approach a traffic circle, or they are just simply playing chicken. So we've got a number of issues specific to pedestrian and bicycle safety, generally around Rehoboth Avenue, often to do with motorist behavior.
Well, on the flip side of that, let me just tell you what I experience when I'm driving. Every time I cross Rehoboth Avenue, almost every time, I'd say at least 90% of the time, a pedestrian jaywalks in front of me. Mm-hmm. And so and pedestrians are not protecting themselves. They're jaywalking all the time, all over the place. And I don't know what to do, but they create a lot of the problems themselves. And so I don't know, sometimes that they should be given tickets and we enforce jaywalking, or I thought we should maybe slow down the speed limit, or maybe we need a brochure about pedestrians. But I mean, whenever I'm crossing Rehoboth Avenue, from 1st or 2nd Street, really, if I'm biking or driving, there's almost always someone walks in front of me.
It's almost inevitable, Donna, when I cross Rehoboth Avenue on my bicycle, if there's no cars, someone will walk in front of me. I have my hands on the brakes every time. But we've got a problem with staffing that relates to enforcement, which makes policing that next to impossible. Mm-hmm. As with hoverboards on the sidewalk and handlebar electric scooters on the sidewalk and bicycles on the sidewalk and rollerblades are coming back and skateboards on the sidewalk. Brochures aren't going to change that. And we have limited number of people to enforce.
Right. Well, I just want to point it out. We can't put all the onus on car drivers. We can't. That's by and large, you have to be extremely careful when you're driving around here. I just think we need to point out the other, all the various risky behaviors that go on there. And
It happens all
I
the
just, we
time.
need to be yeah, I don't think we just throw our hands up and say we can't do anything, David. I would hope maybe we brainstorm, or maybe there are ways to handle it. I don't.
We're faced with a very difficult situation when it comes to enforcement. Being a police person has declined in popularity dramatically. The efforts to recruit people to come here as seasonal officers have been increasingly difficult because of housing and pay and parental. You're not going to be a cop. I'm sorry. It's been really hard. So when you've got a target of 25 people and you start at 15 and end up at 12 and 10, it's people are pretty much on their own. And the jaywalking thing, I watch it all the time. One person looks and goes across, the other people just follow them like lemmings and go across too. They're not even waiting for a car to come because they think the crosswalk's clear. It's very sad, but it happens all the time. So who's going to stop it? Someone's going to get hurt. Absolutely. And
Well,
where do we go?
I'm going to pull us back a little bit because I'm trying to get ideas for future agenda items and not really dive into them at this point because it's not on the agenda. But what I'm hearing is we need to discuss pedestrian bicycle safety, specifically on Rehoboth Avenue, and look at some of the things we've done in the past, such as the blinking lights. Is it successful? Is it not successful? What are other things we can do? What are recommendations we can give to the city, whether it's enforcement? Maybe we need to do some research and look at if there's national programs or grant money that we can help with enforcement. I think at one time, Delaware State Police had programs where they would come in for a day and do some of that stuff. So I think we'll add to one of our future agendas to reevaluate pedestrian and bicycle safety on Rehoboth Avenue and evaluate the things we've done in the past and have they worked well, or do we need to look at other options as well?
Well, and I think we don't want to lose sight of, we haven't had a lot of accidents, right? Of pedestrians and that on, and so we have to give ourselves credit. Maybe some things currently are working. They're working fairly well. We miss the work, it's not perfect, but we can't make it perfect. And so we shouldn't let one negative near miss or something over influence us.
Understood. Any other thoughts on priorities and agenda items?
Well, the other thing, I would like to bring up the traffic circle again. I don't anticipate that being a long conversation, but I would like to talk about that.
Sure.
The visibility problems there. People know that the traffic circle is one of the biggest problems in traffic here in Rehoboth. Everybody feels so many people feel that's dangerous. So I would like to bring that up. And
will do. And that was a common theme with many of you. Kevin, is there anything that you have?
The traffic circle itself?
Yes, and visibility specifically. Kevin, is there anything you have that you think this committee needs to focus on in the near future?
Not that I can think of. I think not that I would say at this point.
I guess the other topic I'd like to put a pitch in for or look at, it's not one we've discussed here on the committee, but I've heard it discussed at the commissioner meeting a couple years ago. And that's the idea and about delivery trucks. When you think about getting around town, one of the big problems is you've got a big delivery truck blocking a whole lane of traffic. And that happens all up and down Rehoboth Avenue and Wilmington and Baltimore. And I just remember, and we've never discussed it, and every city deals with this. And I just remember Jay Legree, when he was first commissioner, he talked about Europe, what they do. They've got much narrower streets than we do. And what they did there was they required delivery trucks to be in and out and make their deliveries by 9 a.m. in the morning and then clear out of the city center for the other business things. I never thought of that. And I know the city sets aside some parking areas for big trucks, but I think maybe I'd like to have this topic researched and looked at. Like currently, what does the city do? Is there anything we can do to improve that, to get those streets, those trucks off the streets so they're not blocking cars or bikes? And I just think when you have that congestion, that's when people's tempers get frayed, or that's when there's more likely to be problems. And we might be able to take some steps to improve it. So, and we've never discussed it here. And I just like to have the committee bat it around and learn from Kevin or Chief Banks about, what the city currently does for that delivery truck.
Sounds good. Worthy topic to discuss, and I've got it on my list. Anything else?
One of the things I had submitted was the, again, it comes back to the speed for me. Is there any way we can look into, because in Country Club Estates, there's a couple of those, the solar powered speed signs, and that does slow people down. If you could if we could put a sign on Byard, because Byard and New King Charles are the two that I deal with the most. Is there a way we can just put a solar powered sign up that people see, oh my gosh, I'm going 35, I better slow down. I think that's very beneficial if you can find spots to put them. So that's one of the things that I like.
Okay, great.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm one of those people on Columbia Avenue. It gets me every once in a while. I'm like, oh, wow, didn't realize. Anything else?
Oh.
Right.
What else?
With
I
that,
have one other thing. Along with that traffic circle, Kevin, when I was walking, we were walking there just the other day. Those crosswalks right in the circle, they really need to be painted. And I know that's a bear and painting in there, but all that white, you have the brick and then the two white signs that are reflective, the white painting on each side of the brick. They're really worn off on a couple of those spots. Is there any way to get those painted?
Yes. Yeah.
They're Del Dot streets.
They are, yeah. So we wrestle with that every once in a while, but I think on occasion we have gone out and actually done it. Do you recall, are they thermoplastic or are they just painted?
I think they replaced. I think they got replaced with thermoplastic. And a lot of them have worn out again.
Because they just did that area, was it last year, maybe a year and a half ago?
They're not very robust.
Yeah, okay. All right, but we'll look at that and see. Those crosswalks right at the circles are just horrible. How that ever was allowed to happen boggles the mind. But yeah, we'll look. We should be able to do something without necessarily working with Del Dot to do it. Especially if it's paint. If it's paint, we can do that fairly easy. Thermoplastic gets a little more expensive, and we would probably push them to try to do that for us.
all right, thank you, Kevin. With that, next is scheduling our next meeting. I've got it down for Friday, January 7th at 1:30 p.m. Does this time work for everyone? First Friday of the month at 1:30? I'm not hearing any objections, so I'm going to
It's
assume
good.
yes.
It's good here.
Excellent.
Typically, yeah, it's good that it's in the afternoon on Friday.
Okay,
I would have a conflict in the morning, but, so we're talking about January 7th?
January 7th, yep. And then going forward, I'd like to just keep it the first Friday of every month at 1:30 in the afternoon. With that, there's no public on the line for citizen comment. Any member comments in closing? All right, well, I want to thank...
Edward, I had citizen comment on two topics, which I'm not even sure we have purview over. One is the bus in the parking lot at the Canal Side Inn at 6th and Canal. And the other is the vacant lot next to Summer House. Multiple people have suggested to me that something should be done there along the lines of a pocket park, since it's directly across the street from City Hall and it's turned into a catch pond. So I'll just pass those along. I've heard those from multiple people on both both situations.
Sure. I will, not sure it's something this committee needs to talk about, but I will pass
I'm not
along
sure
the
either.
concerns to the city staff and city manager.
If I hear it 3 times, then people are concerned.
Great. Anything else? All right, with that.
Just want to welcome Dave.
Yeah, Dave, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for dealing with me as I transition into this role. But we'll get some good things done. All right, thank you. Kevin, thanks for being here. Thanks for the
Yeah, and
IT
if
folks
any
for running the
individual
meeting.
ideas, throw them at us. Dave's good at that, just sending me emails and going, hey, how about this? Every once in a while, he sends a good one, right? And I'll admit it.
All right, and thanks, Brant, from the IT team for getting us going with the Zoom or Ring Central meeting. All right, the meeting
Okay.
is adjourned at 2:31 p.m. Thank you.
All right, thank you.